Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Emily Pelly, and I am the publisher at Morning Dove Press. Morning Dove Press is Eastern Canada's Christian publishing house, and we are so excited to have one of our newest authors with us, Teresa Arsenault. Teresa has written a beautiful series called The Tales of Ellmoria, and we're so excited to be sharing that with you. So welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, what you're up to these days.
Well, I live on Prince Edward Island currently. I was born and raised in Sarnia, Ontario, and my husband and I came here 20 years ago, and he goes back 14 generations on the island.
Wow.
So this was kind of like reconnecting with the whole heritage and all that stuff. And we have two sons who moved from Ontario to live here, with us. And we have another son that's out west. So,
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, how long have you been writing? Has this been a lifelong hobby, or tell us
that. My first stories I remember were in a stroller. My mom had parked me in front of a tree with a big knot hole, and I was a very easy child because you could give me a box of clothespins and I could entertain myself for hours, because each clothespin or each, like, pencil crayons were great because they'd have little ones, which were the children, and then they'd have the big ones, which were the adults. And so I was always creating stories from the time I was in the stroller. The first time I wrote down a story was in grade 3, and the teacher gave us a writing assignment, and she said, write about a pet. So I had a cat and I wrote about my cat. Well, the next day the teacher wasn't there, but the principal came in to take her class, and he read my story out loud as an example of good writing. And so that was like, wow, I know I love doing this, but somebody's actually saying I'm good at this.
Yeah.
So I went on from there to write my first fictional story. And it might sound a little familiar to Scooby-Doo fans, but this was 1967. This was pre-Scooby-Doo. And I wrote a story about these monsters that were showing up outside of a town in the woods. And this monster was showing up, and people were scared to go into the woods. So these kids end up going in there and investigating, and they find a cave, and there's a bunch of monster suits hanging up in the cave, and they find out that these are counterfeiters. And they're doing the monster thing to scare people away. And so these kids end up being the heroes in the story, that they go to the police after they get kidnapped and all this stuff. They end up going to the police, and the bad guys get captured. So that was my first story when I was 9.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Okay. So you clearly have an amazing imagination and are able to create wonderful worlds. That's so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah. My imagination has always been, it's just always been my friend. I was, like if you've read Anne of Green Gables,
Of course.
like, I live in Prince Edward Island, okay? But when I was living in Ontario, I read Anne of Green Gables, and I thought, this is my sister, because I would sit there, and we had like a sun porch in the house I grew up in, and I would sit on the wicker sofa or lie on the wicker sofa, and I would be creating scenarios in my head, and I'd have tears rolling down my face, just like Anne of Green Gables, because I was dreaming or daydreaming that my best friend was in trouble, and I rescued her, and I ended up giving my own life in order to rescue her, and then she's crying over her dear loyal friend who gave her life to save her, and so I got the tears coming. I was Anne of Green Gables in real life.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, Anne of Green Gables is one of my favorites. So tell us, introduce us then to the world of Ellmoria, the tales of Ellmoria.
Okay.
Open the door for us.
Yeah. So my stories are more character driven than even plot driven. And so I haven't created a completely new world, but new cultures.
Right.
So other than Abelais, which is very unique in itself, and that comes into play in book 2, Ellmoria is like a pre-industrial Earth.
Okay.
Okay, so like they don't have the factories and things like that, but you know, they have trade and they have ships and merchant ships and different things like that.
Right.
So most of the fantastical stuff comes with the people and with the cultures. And I love to explore different cultures and then just let my imagination kind of spin off of that. So book 1 highlights the bee singers of Verhoeven. So they're able to tap into the songs of the bees, and there's a giant hive, and there actually are hives like this in the world because I researched it. I do a lot of research, even though it's imagination. I do a lot of research, and so it's like a big clay thing that goes around in spirals, and I've actually seen pictures of things like this, but it's a beehive, and they're able to tap into the song. So like we all know that bees hum, but Revelation, it talks about the song of creation and how all creation worships God, and it's things, you know, in the earth and under the earth and in the sea, and how all creation is singing this song of worship. And so she taps into the ancestor of my main character, because I'm into prologues. I like prologues. So, and they are able to harvest the honey in a supernatural way, and through the bees just release their honey when they sing this song, and the honey has healing properties, like supernaturally healing properties. We all know that honey does have natural healing abilities, but it's like super, you know, super healing properties in this. So that's in book 1. Book 2 introduces Abelais, and the culture of Abelais is, this is an island that nobody else in Ellmoria knows about because it's hidden by a veil of white mist.
Okay.
And there are what do you call it, physiological things going on with the island that cause this mist to come. So like there's a cool spray. They don't have rain, so this is kind of, it's like the Garden of Eden, basically. It's kind of like the Garden of Eden, and it's hidden. These people are completely protected, and of course they have a history too, and which we go into in book 2.
Okay.
So there's some of the culture is based on Jewish culture,
Right.
and then a whole bunch of my imagination. And book 2 also introduces the tree people, and the tree people are loosely based on North American First Nations people.
Okay.
And a bunch of my imagination in there. So yeah, so that's yeah, the Ellmoria, like I said, the land itself, other than Abelais, there isn't a whole lot of unique stuff, like, you know, but it's more the people in the cultures that come into play, and some of the beings and that kind of thing.
Right. And so the first book, The Bee Singer Queen, that will be coming out very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about The Bee Singer Queen.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit thrown off here. Yeah, it's like I said, the bee singers, it starts off, the prologue starts off where there's a mother, and she has a newborn infant, and there's been a drought for an undetermined amount of time, and everybody's starving, and they're sick, they're dying. And she goes into the forest, and she's got this bucket on her arm, and she's gathering like bark and leaves and whatever she can find that she might be able to boil and get some kind of nutrition out of. She's her baby is dying, and her milk is dried up because she's starving. And so finally she just calls out, and she says, if there must be a creator, and if there is a creator, do you care about what's happening? And she cries out to the creator, and then he appears to her, and he comes and he takes her to this giant beehive, and he gets her to tap into the song of the bees, and she's able to harvest this honey. And as soon as anyone just takes a taste of this honey, they're miraculously healed of everything. So like, she's there and her skin is all dry and sallow, and her hair is like straw, and like everything comes back. Her milk comes back, the baby comes, is able to nurse, and she goes and she brings it to everyone. And so this is how it starts off.
Okay.
But like in real life, man gets in there, greed gets in there, and so when she's telling them about the creator, and his name in Tales of Ellmoria is Filtor, and he appears as a winged horse with like a unicorn, but with wings and everything. And this is one of the ways he appears in the series, the most frequent, as Filtor. And so things get in and they corrupt everything. And by the time we get to the meat of the story, it's a highly patriarchal, oppressive to women kind of atmosphere that comes into it. And this is what kind of causes everything to go awry with bee singers. And even the healing properties of the honey are no longer as pronounced as what they were in the beginning, because of the sin that comes in and just kind of corrupts everything.
Right.
Yeah. But we go through 3 generations of women by the time we get to the end of the story. And then there is a redemption that does come eventually. But before that, there's opportunities for redemption that were not taken.
Right.
And yeah. So a lot of it has to do with, like, as a writer, you pull in your own life experiences into things. So I grew up in a home where women were not valued. Like, it was not a good thing to be female. And so and then I had other outside experiences of men that were very negative. And so I grew up, by the time I was a young adult, my belief system was that men were basically all selfish creeps. Somebody asked me that, and I said that very matter-of-factly. And then, the Lord started to convict me on that. And you have sons, Teresa. What do you think this is doing to your sons, that you have this attitude? They are growing up to be men, and you have this attitude towards men. And so the Lord just really started to change my attitude gradually about men, to where I could see that their value. And then by doing that, I was also able to see my own value.
Right.
And so this is kind of, if there's a message to be taken away from Bee Singer Queen, that's what I would like it to be. That people would see that they have value,
right,
and that like we don't need to have this war between the sexes thing. Like,
Right.
we all have our own value. But like one of the questions that you had sent me is, what do I hope readers take from this book? Yes, I hope that they can take that. But
Yeah.
first and foremost, I want them to be entertained.
Yeah.
Because why do you pick up a novel? I can go and read all kinds of self-help books, but when I pick up a novel, I want to be entertained. I want to be taken to a different place. It's an escape.
Right.
I want to be taken to a different world and, experience a daydream that somebody has written
Right.
and be entertained. But so first and foremost, I want them to be entertained. And then I would also like them to be inspired
Right.
by, obviously. And, and then if they can take away a message, if they can just take away the message that God values me,
Mm.
and then that's great.
Absolutely.
But yeah, but they should be entertained. Like I don't like tacked on messages and, or you have a sermon that maybe has a little bit of an illustration or something. No, it's not a sermon, it's a story. It's supposed to be entertaining.
I think that's funny because you do see that in some Christian literature. But so how in this conversation with Christian writers, what has been your experience with including faith in your stories? You could just kind of spoke to that a bit. Like it's not just a tacked on message or writing a sermon. It doesn't have to be a sermon in order to be a Christian story. So kind of how do you marry those two, this creative spirit that God has clearly given you,
Mm-hmm.
and your faith in him? How do those come out in your work?
Well, it's like everything. If I'm a follower of Jesus, then everything I say and do should breathe with the Holy Spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything should flow from that relationship. So things I've learned or I'm learning, insights that I feel the Lord has given me, experiences I've gone through, like they'll all find their way into my story,
Right.
without it having to be, well, I got to work this in, like
Right. Right.
I invite Holy Spirit into every aspect, whether I'm doing my planning stage, which I do. Here's one of my planning.
Oh, wow.
I've got a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So like whether I'm doing the planning stage, or I'm doing revisions, or I'm doing the actual writing, there's one scene in Bee Singer Queen that I had to set it down and just pray into it for like 2 or 3 weeks, because it's a very difficult scene. And I wanted the reader to understand the trauma that my character was experiencing without them being, I guess, visually, I didn't want them to be slimed by it.
Right.
Like I didn't want them to have images, because I'm very visual. So somebody can tell me something and I see the whole thing
Yeah. Yeah.
in my mind.
Right.
I didn't want them to graphically see what was happening, but at the same time to understand the betrayal and the trauma that was happening in
Right.
that scene. And so, yeah, I really prayed about that for a few weeks, and asking Holy Spirit to tell me, how do I do this? And I think that I was able to accomplish that, to where they could go, the reader can say, okay, I get it, I understand what's going on here, but I don't have images stuck in my head.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
that's really good. I mean, because even like Jesus himself was a storyteller, right? I think sometimes we can overcomplicate what the Holy Spirit has given us as a gift. To think it has to be a sermon, it has to fit into a certain box. I think, and that's what I love about Tales of Ellmoria. It's what I love about your writing, is that it embraces that creativity and imagination, and also glorifies and honors God. So yeah, I just want to thank you for that. Yeah,
Thanks.
so Tales of Ellmoria. This is going to be a series you will want to keep an eye on. The first book, Bee Singer Queen, is going to be available very soon. And then you can watch for subsequent books over the coming months into 2024. So yeah, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Morning Dove Press. And you can also keep an eye on our website, morningdovepress.ca, as these books in this series start to come out. So thank you, Teresa. Oh,
and
yeah.
could I just mention the cover art was done by Jedida, the Art of Sark. She is an amazing artist from Austria. And so I'm really excited about the cover art too.
The art throughout this series is fantastic. Absolutely. So yes, thank you so much, Teresa. God bless you. And yeah, we'll be chatting with you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, everyone.